So today I thought we would talk about vintage. So what does the term vintage mean? It's really simple. It just refers to the year that the grapes were harvested. So if a wine is labelled as vintage, then you should be able to find a number on the label, because that will tell you what vintage, what year the grapes came from. So for example, there's a wine here which is an Italian white, Pecorino it's called. Now you have to look really hard to find it, but down here at the bottom in tiny curly writing you can see 2013. So that tells you that all the grapes for this wine came from the 2013 vintage. So if it isn't a vintage wine, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not as good. If you think about champagne, for example, there's a nice thought. Champagne is often called either non-vintage or vintage. If you see NV on the label, that stands for non-vintage, and that means that the grapes come from lots of different years. Now that really is a secret behind a lot of champagne, because each different champagne house wants to create a wine very much in their own style. And to do that, they need to blend the grapes from different years, different vintages, in order to keep a consistent style, because obviously vintages change from year to year depending on whether it's a hot year or if there's a lot of rain. So the idea is you blend these different vintages together to come out with something that stays consistent from year to year. So some champagnes are made as vintage, and they will have a vintage on them, and they're made from grapes from that single year, really just to show off the characters of that particular year. But most champagne is sold as non-vintage. Now vintage is a big deal in port, and that's because depending on the year, the port houses, as they're known, will decide whether to declare a vintage or not. And generally you probably only get 3 or 4 vintages declared every decade. For example, this is one of my favourites from Taylor's, their Quinta de Vargelas, which is a fantastic producer. This has got 2002 on the label, which actually wasn't a brilliant year, but it was still good for the good producers. And so you will get the year very clearly on a vintage port, because it is all about that particular vintage. Vintage is not the be-all and end-all, it's just a guide really. It's something else to tell you a bit more about the wine, whether it comes from a single year or not. But it doesn't always necessarily mean it's better than a non-vintage. It really does depend on the wine. So the best way to find out is obviously pour yourself a glass and try some. I hope you found that helpful. Please do leave any comments you might have, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, and if you do have any questions, do let me know in the comments below and we can pick those up for future videos. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Bye.